Here we have the conclusion to Outsiders and First Dog on the Moon.
The private sector, it would barely bat an eyelid at. So yes, it affects people's lives, but compared to the scale of a broken promise, such as introducing a new tax that affects every business and every person's life, it's small peanuts. And that's what I would have been saying. Yes, it's a broken promise, but the scale of it is pretty insignificant. That sounds harsh on the ABC, but as I said, I've spent many years in private enterprise where that sort of thing, you would leave. There's no reason for the ABC to lose any content or any quality whatsoever.
Well, we'll see how that shakes out. But Sophie Black, just a final point.
Let's just remember that the ABC is one of the most trusted public institutions in this country and is very much well loved by the vast majority of the public. So,
and on that note,
the very final part of that is also that this is the last part of the string of that promise that was also involving cuts to health and education and changes to pensions and changes to the GST.
Which also have some resonance, I think.
And do we really want to bring up...
We have to. I'm sorry, we have to stop because we have to announce the winner of our On the Contrary Grand Final is Geraldine Quinn, who, in an incredibly close contest, won by 1 vote. So there will be a Leyland Brothers musical after all, something to look forward to. I apologise for cutting off a splendid and spirited conversation with our outsiders this morning to deliver that news, but I was duty bound. Your outsiders this morning have been Rowan Dean, editor of The Spectator Australia, Sophie Black, editor-in-chief of Private Media, and Eric Jensen, editor of The Saturday Paper. We will do that again next week. It's 5 to 10. Hello, patriots. Welcome to First Dog on the Moon's Guide to Modern Living. I'm Walkley Award-winning cartoonist for The Guardian, First Dog on the Moon. And something else you may not know about me is that I'm also a healthcare professional. He's not actually a healthcare professional. And I'm here today with an important community service announcement. There's a health crisis facing our nation, worse than Ebola, worse than efficiency dividenditis, which is afflicting federal cabinet, the only symptom of which is telling barefaced lies with a straight face, a tragic illness. However, today we are faced with an even more serious public health issue. The Federal Senate this week has announced another broad-ranging inquiry, number 678 to be precise, into wind turbines. Scientific tests and anecdotal evidence suggest that close proximity to the ongoing and repeated attempts to destroy this important green industry may result in a wide range of different conditions, effects, symptoms and manifestations of disease, illness, unwellness and extreme grumpiness. If you experience any of the following symptoms, you should consult a healthcare professional immediately. Not actually a healthcare professional. A stinging or redness upon the face, not unlike a feeling of being slapped. This may be a condition known as face palm. It can be the result of learning that some senators view the science of climate change as made up, and simultaneously the science of wind turbine syndrome as a real thing. Next, if you sometimes experience the feeling of a blow to the forehead as if your head has connected firmly with a desk or computer keyboard, it could be a case of head desk. This can result from hearing the government and Nick Xenophon have launched another goddamn useless time, money-wasting, ideologically motivated inquiry into the wind industry. If you unexpectedly experience rage, find yourself shouting abuse at the internet and throwing things at your radio, it could be that you've just learnt that wind turbines aren't allowed within 2 kilometres of a house, while coal power stations only have to be 1 kilometre away. Coal mines only have to be 100 metres away. Ask the residents of Morwell how that's working out. This next debilitating condition can be very serious. If you find yourself suffering from uncontrollable laughter and disbelief, this could be a result of finding out that anti-Windfarm scientists have discovered 246 different symptoms of what they call visceral vibratory vestibular disturbance. Among many other things, wind turbines are responsible for causing mutant chickens, dog epilepsy, the extinction of bees, hip pain, itchy ears, violent crime, interrupting rail migration, and one report of a peahen refusing to remain with a peacock. Do you find yourself feeling depressed, sad, despairing at the greed and stupidity of politicians, at the bare-faced, shameless manipulation of democratic processes in order to destroy an industry which is a critical component of the fight against climate change? Well, so do I. If you experience any of these symptoms, or any other symptoms of anything else ever, you could be suffering from excessive wind turbine inquiry syndrome. If pain persists, please see your lobbyist, or a healthcare professional like myself. Not actually a healthcare professional. This has been a community service announcement brought to you by the First Dog on the Moon Institute.
Well, yeah, you get that, don't you? I think Joe Hockey was the most outspoken anti-wind turbinologist in the government, where he claimed that he finds the very sight of a wind farm to be, I think he said it was obnoxious. He just does not like the sight of them. There are people who don't, and nearly all of the people who don't like the sight of a large-scale wind farm, they are the people who have never been offered money to have a turbine tower on their land. It's been really, really clear cut around here. Anywhere there's been a planned wind turbine development, all the people who were offered a tower on their land thought it was really great. All the people who were on the other side of the fence and had to look at the towers, they thought it was really horrible. And a whole bunch of people said that the reason they'd bought their property was, quote, for the view, unquote. And when you consider that, quote, the view, unquote, involves land that's owned and operated, controlled, under the custodianship of somebody else entirely, then it's a completely nonsensical point of view. Pardon the pun, you know. Oh, I bought this place so I could look at your place, therefore you're not allowed to make any changes on your place because that interferes with my amenity of having a view. The other point that I've noticed is that every individual single person who opposes wind turbines lives in a house connected to a coal-fired power station. I would personally say that, you know, if you really want to go out there and register a protest about wind turbines, the first thing you have to do is make your own friggin' electricity. Make it without burning anything, and when you know something about electricity and how to make it and how to store it and all the rest of it, then you will have the entitlement to express a valid opinion regarding wind turbines. If you're one of these filthy bastards that's connected to a coal-fired power station, farting carbon dioxide, warming up the world, essentially trying to kill the grandchildren and all of their descendants because of your convenience of amenity, I don't think you should be allowed to express your opinion in public. But, you know, that's just my opinion and I'm allowed to express it, so I suppose I have to put up with you expressing yours. As for Tony Abbott and his government, they are experiencing the consequences of their actions. In August 2013, I put up a video saying vote green or die. Australia voted to die. You know, let's have Tony Abbott. He'll lead us into a broad sunlit uplands where nobody believes in climate science because the economists can't get their head around the idea that there is actually no safe level of carbon emissions if you want to have a planet you can live on. That's because in the last 50 years, the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has increased by 25%. You know, we've gone from 300 and something parts per million up to 400 and something parts per million. And before the Industrial Revolution, it was 230 parts per million. We're damaging the homeostasis mechanism of the biosphere. That's the bit that keeps the temperature, you know, just fine, happy, the medium, you know, where humans can prosper. We're damaging all the mechanisms that fix that. The people who say, oh yeah, but people only emit 2.5% of all the carbon dioxide that is emitted into the atmosphere, and that's a tiny fraction, so it shouldn't matter, and, you know, bugger the science because I don't want to think about the numbers. They seem to forget that the other 97.5% of the carbon dioxide that's emitted to the planet by things like volcanoes has traditionally, before we had our Industrial Revolution, it's been perfectly balanced by the amount of carbon dioxide absorbed by the plants. So the forests have grown and grown and grown, and the volcanoes have farted and everything's been fine. But then people came along and we started adding more on top of what the volcanoes were emitting, and at the same time we started chopping down the forests. So there's the same amount coming from the volcanoes, that's true, but we're adding more to it, and we're getting rid of the storage mechanism, which is the forests. So here we are in November, and at the moment the temperature here is probably around 30 degrees under the trees now, because it's half an hour later than when I measured it at the start of this video, or the previous video. And it'll be 44 or 45 degrees out there in the middle of the clearing, because it was 40 degrees at the start of the video. Yesterday, when the Glen Innes Town Square was experiencing its gala opening, it was 34 degrees out here, and on Thursday, when it was 30 degrees here, the temperatures in the main street were 36 air temperature, 44 white concrete surface temperature, 63.8 black bitumen temperature. So we just add 4 degrees to all that. We get people standing around yesterday morning at 11 o'clock to midday, listening to a bagpiper wearing a woolen kilt, woolen jacket, woolen hat, thick shirt, thick socks, all to be traditionally Celtic, to bagpipe the new Celtic tattoo in the middle of the town square, surrounded by bitumen that was nearly 70 degrees surface temperature, and there wasn't much wind yesterday at that time of the day. It's as if the entrepreneurial, capitalistic, busyness side of the community just doesn't get it. Their politics and their economic daydreams are not the sort of things that will convince the atmospheric chemistry and the thermodynamics of the system to pay attention. You're not going to suck tourists up to Glen Innes to stand and marvel and gaze at the Celtic tattoo when they're standing around in the middle of air that's 40 degrees. And they're certainly not going to go there to shop if they can't park near the shop, because most of them who shop there are geriatric statistically in Glen Innes. And they've taken out 24 car parks. So yeah, that's what happens when you think local and ignore global. And Australia is at the moment at the mercy of a succession of state and federal political decisions, which are more or less purpose designed to make it more and more difficult to get a good governance outcome. You know, the state Liberal Party in New South Wales has just decided that there's no longer going to be any requirement for the local councils to advertise before they close roads, and they don't need to advertise tenders, they can just appoint them. You know, we literally have got the vampires in charge of the blood bank when it comes to how Australia is being administered at the moment. And Tony Abbott invites everybody to G20 thinking he's not going to need to speak about global warming, and he gets sandbagged by Obama and the Chinese having done a deal on reducing carbon emissions. Then Julie Bishop goes over to the United Nations and claims that Obama's not aware of what Australia is doing to try and maintain the condition of the Great Barrier Reef, when every fucking marine scientist in Australia says that under the latest policy, the reef is not going to retain its current system of destruction, because it's all going to get worse. We're doing nothing to try and restore the reef to a pristine tourist attraction. We're going to dig fucking holes in it, dredge channels in it, dump dredge spoil in it, also that people from China can come and buy boatloads of coal that they don't actually want to buy because their government's decided not to buy it, and the price of coal is dropping. And I think the price of iron ore fell through $70 a tonne. So the entire quarry farm mentality has a very limited future here in Australia. It's all going down the gurgle hole, people. And we've got this marvellous drought. I went for a drive to Deepwater yesterday. You should see it there. You think this place is bare and dry and stinking hot. It gets worse the further away from here you get, actually. Warbles on all at the YouTube. Ciao.